All right. Welcome back to the Kenobi podcast. It has been a long time. Yes, it has. I'm your host. I'm Chris Kenobi, but I'm not alone. I'm here with the man who this is all about. Everything I do in here, everything I try to give to you is about this guy right here because he is a role model. He is the quintessential Jedi. He's a man with moral integrity, a spiritual compass, dedication, discipline. He's all in all. His name is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi, say hi to the people, please.
Hello there.
Right back at you, my friend. Okay, so I know I've been gone a while, but I'm not going to make any apologies for that. I do got to jump back and get some other stuff on the platform up and running. But I have not going to apologize like I've been slacking off here. Let me tell you what I've been doing. I've been studying book after book after book after the sacred text, all of it. I've been doing for one reason and one reason only, to give you the answers that you need. The answer to the big question, the $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion, big, beautiful bill dollar question. What the hell is going on? And let me tell you something right now. Hell is going on. Let's talk a little bit about what you want to talk about. You want to know about Russia and Ukraine. Okay, well, our president said at a news conference 48 hours ago that he is going to Russia. The American president is going to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin, okay, to talk about this war and try to bring peace, because he said he was going to do it in day one, but now we're 6 months in. Wait a minute. He said he was going to Russia, but he's really meeting in Alaska. Did the United States concede Alaska to the Russians? I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about the economy? I'll tell you about the economy. Stuff is going up. Price of beef is going up. Your eggs, take a look. Coffee, we got tariffs with Brazil. I know you don't want to talk about that, but it's the tariffs. And as you look to candy for Halloween and Christmas gifts and Thanksgiving coming around and gas, look for all the prices to go up, because they're going to go up. But we don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about the midterm elections? No, you don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about the Epstein files? I can talk to you about the Epstein file, because you know why? I don't care if Bill Clinton's in the Epstein files. Bill, can I call you that? If you are in those Epstein's file, my man, you've got some splaining to do to me and everybody else. So straight up, I don't care about who's in the Epstein's file, but I can tell you who does care that they're in the Epstein's file, and that's our president, because Ghislaine Maxwell was in a maximum security prison, and now she's in Club Fed. Somebody got something on somebody, but we're not going to talk about that. Let's talk about the National Guard in Washington, D.C. That's dystopian, guys. We got the National Guard treading on other states, taking over states. Tell me that's not futuristic. I think they make movies about that kind of stuff. What do you want to talk about? Who's next? What next? It doesn't matter what you want to talk about, because anything you want to talk about, anything on your ever-loving mind right now that's going on in the news, next door, in your house, outside your house, the answer can all be found right here on this platform. You are in the right place and you're looking for the right answer, because the answer to any question you have about what's going on is in our search. As we look for him, as we try to understand the return of the chosen one. The chosen one is coming back, people. He told us he's coming back, and the chosen one can come back any day right now, this minute, as I'm talking to you. Bam, chosen one can come back. So we've been on our journey together. We've been going through the sacred text. We've been looking in the book of Revelation as we try to go back now and recap quickly for you where we've been and what we've done. We started off with the book of Revelation, and Jesus told us who he was, a dimension of himself. He told us the state of the seven churches and what was going to come. And then we went to chapter 2. Chapter 2 gave us the seven churches. Each one of the churches had an issue. Some of them came with a commendation. Some came with condemnation. But we went over these churches, and after he's finished Jesus talking to the churches and giving us a view of where the church was, we went into chapter 4, the harpazo. Chapter 4, that's the rapture verse, 4.1, come up hither. We went into the harpazo. We went into the Jewish wedding, and we went into the doctrine of imminence. We looked into and proven to you that 4.1 is the harpazo verse. I even showed you where it is in the Bible, the term rapture itself. I gave you that backup. And on top of all of that backup, I told you and I proved to you that we need to be ready any minute, any second of any day for the rapture to happen, for the return of the chosen one. And I told you the return of the chosen one is in two phases, the rapture, the revelation. It's two things. But right now, the rapture can happen any second, any time, any day, in the blink of an eye. We're out of here. So I went over that. Then we went to chapter 5. Chapter 5 talked about the seven sealed scroll. It talked about the song of the redeemed, the 24 elders. That's the totality of all the church generals throughout the church history. And we found out that scroll, there's only one person that could open that scroll, and that was the worthy is the Lamb of God. And then after that, people, I said we have to take a detour. You wanted to go into chapter 6. You wanted to get into the scroll, into the four horsemen of the apocalypse. You wanted to get into the wrath of the Lamb and all of that stuff breaking loose. But that's the mistake that a lot of people make when they try to go over the book of Revelation. The reason why people say the book of Revelation is so confusing is because they do not know their Old Testament. They don't understand, as I've called it and said it all the time, the architectural design, the flow of the old into the new. One book, two different chapters, but it's all a flow. It's all foundational, moving right along. And so when people get to the book of Revelation and they're hit with all of this stuff and all of a sudden they don't understand it, it's because they don't understand the Old Testament and they didn't look. Because the Old Testament spoke about the return of the chosen one. And so then I took a detour. We talked about Jesus in his confidential meeting with 4 of his disciples. And he mentioned what was going to come. The sign of his coming, he said. And he pointed us to the book of Daniel. He pointed us to Daniel, so we took a little detour. We went to book of Daniel chapter 9, and we talked about the 70 weeks. The 70 weeks of history of mankind that's left. 70 weeks appointed to the Jews. And we talked about what it was. A week is a Shabuah. A Shabuah is in the term of not 7 days, but 7 years in this text alone. And so we went through it. And Gabriel told Daniel that this 490 weeks, this 490 years, the 70 weeks, was for these 6 things. To make an end a sin, to bring reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. We went through all of that, and then bam, we wasn't done. We had to go through because Daniel gave us the clue. You see, 469 weeks, we went over that, 483 of the 490 years was already accomplished and accounted for. Already accomplished and accounted for. It was from the beginning of the decree to restore Jerusalem to the presentation of the Messiah. And we went through the days and we went through the years, as you can see. And I have to once again, I'm indebted to Sir Robert Anderson from his book, The Coming Prince, who gave us the breakdown and gave us the history, proven history of all of these events. And we found out that Gabriel's prophecy and the actual historic days match up. So I've been able to even prove to you through going through this exercise that the Messiah was the Messiah, because the Messiah had to come on the day he did for that 173,880 days to be correct. Boom. I showed you that. And that's all in our recap. And so now we're moving on. This is the second part of our detour to the book of Daniel. And let me tell you something. This is going to blow your mind. If nothing else didn't blow your mind, This is going to blow your mind, okay? Now we're going to account for that last week. We've already accounted for 69 weeks of the 70-week prophecy. Now, some of you could say something like this. Well, you know, Chris, if the prophecy was for 490 years or 70 weeks, whatever you want to call the Shabuah, and that was over 2,300 years ago, then this prophecy should have been accomplished in full. We're way past 490 years. So if this is going to make any sense, everything that Daniel said should have happened by now. Well, you got a good point. And let me tell you something. If I don't have an answer for you about that, then we got some big problems here. Let me tell you what the big problems are. If we don't have an answer for you, then Daniel is wrong. Gabriel is wrong. The Bible is wrong, and we can all throw it all out the window. Because everything about prophecy hinges on Daniel. Everything about the chosen one's return happening the way it's supposed to happen hinges on this 490 years or 70 weeks. So I got to have a good answer for you about it, right? Well, let me give you the short answer. The short answer is we've only accounted for 69 weeks. The 70th week, that last week of human history, has not happened yet. Okay? So there's a gap of time between the 483 years that was accomplished to 69 weeks and all this stuff in the middle till we get to that last week of human history. Let me give it to you like this. Let me explain it to you like this then. Let me give it to you the way I'm going to give it to you. Let's say right now you go to a play. You ever went to a play or maybe a school play for one of your kids or nephew or niece, or you went to Broadway and you saw a play. So you're seeing the play and everything's happening, and then at one point, some around about the middle of the play, there's this big crescendo. Then after this crescendo, the lights come on, the stage goes down, the curtain goes down, and there's a word that comes across the stage. It says intermission. And the intermission is a short interval between parts of a play, a movie, or a concert. It gives the performers time to rest and prepare for the grand finale. It gives the audience a chance to catch its breath. Now, if you've been to a play or something like that, you know when that intermission comes, people get up, they stretch their legs, they run to the ladies' room, the men's room, may go get a drink at the bar or something to eat or whatever it is. But that intermission gives you that time, and then you get back to your seats, and then curtains come up, play goes on where it stopped. So what we have, and let me be the first to introduce you to, a prophetic intermission. Prophetic intermission is the gap of time after the 69 weeks, but before the 70th week. Certain things still have to happen, but these things that's going to happen inside of this intermission is not part of the 70th week. And I'm going to show you that as we go into the last two verses of Daniel chapter 9 that we're going to talk about. So the first thing we're going to go into is we're going into verse 26 of Daniel chapter 9. And so it says, and after the 62 weeks, the Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now, what does all that mean? Well, let's keep going here. All right. So Gabriel said after the 62 weeks. So what is he saying now? I thought we already accounted for 69 weeks. Well, if you remember the wording for the first 69, it was 7 for the decree to rebuild Jerusalem and 62 to the presentation of the Messiah. So 7 and 62 is 69. All he's saying is after the 62, meaning after the 69, because the 7 was the first stage of this 483, 69 week prophecy. So what he's saying is after the 62 weeks, meaning after the 69, so we only got one more week left. So after the 69 weeks, remember, and the 69 weeks was the presentation. Remember now what we went to, the presentation of the Messiah, the triumphal entry. So what Gabriel's saying is after the triumphal entry, the Messiah will be karat. Now that word cut off, it means karat. It means to be cut off, executed, or eliminated. So after he presented himself, and it all makes sense because that's what happened. Again, this is in the intermission. This is not part of that last week. In the intermission, the Messiah will be karat. He'd be cut off. But he's not cut off for himself. Well, who was he cut off for? I hope somebody's raising their hand and saying, hallelujah, he was cut off for me, because he got karat for you, eliminated for me, cut off for both of us. So I hope whoever's watching this is raising up a hand and saying he got cut off not for himself, but for me. Okay? And then it says, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now, we have good hindsight history here, because if you remember in Luke chapter 19, Jesus told the Jews, because they missed the day of their visitation, as he came into the city and he wept over it, and he told them if they knew only this day that could have brought them peace, that tragedy wouldn't have come. But because they missed the day of that visitation, because they missed it, that tragedy was going to come to Jerusalem. And how do we know this? Because in 38 AD, Titus Vespasian sacked Jerusalem. He destroyed the temple. He took it over, surrounded it, and sacked it. Burned it all down. Okay? So Jesus indicated this all in his intermission. And now when we go back to Daniel, Daniel is looking ahead and saying, after the Messiah presents himself, he's going to be karat. And we know what happened. And Jesus said, the prince who is to come, because you missed the day of your visitation, it will be Titus Vespasian who is going to sack the city and destroy it and destroy the temple. Now, I'm giving you some history because I want you to understand something. Everything we're saying is provable. This is not coming up with anything. This is not an allegory or anything like that. We are coming up with history that ties into prophecy. Prophecy that ties into the Word of God. The Word of God that binds it all together because he holds everything together by the power of his Word. And he is the Word, the chosen one. So all of this is provable. So the Jewish historian, Josephus, described the destruction of Jerusalem and the murder of 1.1 million Jews, with 97,000 taken captive. Thousands were sold as slaves and many more dispersed all over the world. It was the beginning of the end. And you can find that in Josephus' Book of War, book 5, chapter 22. So that's what we have there about this prophetic intermission. And that's what we have happen in verse 26. After the 69 weeks, after the Messiah presents himself, he will be karat, but not for himself. And then after he's karat, because he told them they missed the day of their visitation, Titus Vespasian came in, sacked them all, dispersed them all, killed about 1 million of them all. And that's all historic. All historic. I don't get it. And here's something you should be excited about. right here in the Old Testament, in this verse 26, it says right there that the Messiah will be cut. He'll be cut off. Boy, poor Jewish brothers, they're blinded. He placed blindness, corporate blindness over the Jews. One day it's going to be lifted, and they're going to see he whom they wounded. And it's going to break their hearts. As we get into the book of Revelation, you're going to come to see how they come to understand what's going down. So now, that's what's going on. That's the prophetic intermission. After the 69, but before 70. This happens, okay? So moving right along, let's talk about other stuff in this intermission. Let's break this down now, okay? So the intermission, let's just go over to Jesus. Jesus also gave us a clue into this prophetic intermission. But again, if you don't know the Old Testament, you could never figure it out. If you don't get the Old Testament, you would have not known that Jesus himself was saying, there's going to be an intermission between my ministry after I present myself to when after I'm karat before the 70th week. Now, how I'm going to prove that to you, it's right there in the Old and New Testament. Watch this. So the Messiah presents himself. And then in Luke chapter 4, he went to Nazareth where he had been brought up. And on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written. And he says this, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then Jesus rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, sat down in his chair, looked as cool and looked as only he could look as our chosen one. And the eyes of everyone on the synagogue was fastened to him. And he began by saying to them, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." Today, I presented myself. I told you my mission. While I'm here, this is what I've come to do. So now, this makes good sense to me. This is what he did while he was here for those 3 years. This is who he was, right? But here's the thing. If you know your Old Testament, you realize in the book of Isaiah, there's a comma after that, the year of the Lord's favor. And there is a part that Jesus did not say after this. And now, if I'm right in what I'm saying, after that comma, there should be something pointing us to that 70th week, okay? The only way we're going to find out is we've got to go to Isaiah. We've got to go to Isaiah. So let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah 61. Here's the words from Isaiah 61, Old Testament. Architectural design. Man, you've got to get excited about the Bible. You've got to feel it. I don't want you to read this, man. I want you to sink yourself between the lines. I want you to see it happening. I want you to see Jesus picking up that scroll. I want you to see him saunter over to that chair, sit down as only he can look, and tell him that today it's fulfilled. I want you to understand now how sly he was, how cool and shrewd he was, to leave us a little hint and saying to himself, I hope my children can find this and understand my word, because the volume of the book is me, right? So here we go. Isaiah 61. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Now watch this. To proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. And there's our comma. Jesus stopped at the comma, right? Everything before that comma is in that intermission. Because after he presents himself at week 69. After 69, he does all of these things here, but he stopped at the comma. Why did he not recite the one sentence after the comma? Let's find out. The verse after the comma, after it says, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, it says, and, Isaiah 61, and the day of vengeance of our God. The day of vengeance of our God. What day of vengeance? That's the Great Tribulation. That's in the 70th week. The reason why Jesus didn't pronounce that, because that was not going to happen in the intermission. That happens in the 70th week. So Jesus didn't say that last part because he knew that that did not pertain to his intermission after he presented himself, which was part of the 69 for 83 years. This is the part, again, of the prophetic intermission. So not only did we get it from Daniel, Jesus, boom, laid it right there for us. The aftermath, the intermission is all of that stuff in 61. But the part that he didn't talk about is in the 70th week. I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove it to you. And that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove it to him, Obi. You know what I'm saying? I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it.
I will do what I must.
I will do it what I must. Okay. Now, let me give you some other stuff that has to happen. Now, after this, inside of this intermission, I want you to think about all the stuff that's happened, some of it that we know about. All of these things had to happen inside the prophetic intermission after the 69 intermission 70th week. Here's some things that happened in the intermission. After he presented himself, the Messiah was karat, the crucifixion. After the karat, the intermission, the death of the Messiah, the resurrection of the Messiah, the ascension of the Messiah, the coming of the Holy Spirit, the church age. Inside again, this intermission is the rapture of the church. The rapture of the church is not in the 70th week. Why? Because we're not supposed to be here for that 70 week. Why? Because the whole 70 weeks pertain to the Jews. So the rapture of the church is also in the intermission. And there's something else in this intermission. I'm laying it out there for you right now, and it's going to happen. And you already saw parts of that or shadows of this happening in the past few weeks ago when Israel attacked Iran and laid waste to what they thought was the nuclear program. Russia threatened Netanyahu that if you didn't stop bombing Iran, we're coming in Israel. And that's why our president jumped in, and then we started bombing Iran because we played chess and we jumped in front of Israel as if to say to Putin, now if you come in Israel now, you got to come in America. And that's what stopped them from coming in. It's going to happen again. There's no love lost between Putin and Netanyahu, okay? Now, some people could say also that Israel becoming a nation in 1948 is also part of this intermission. For argument's sake, it could be because Israel becoming a nation in 1948 is crucial and one of the linchpins to all prophetic end time prophecy, okay? So that's what we've got about the intermission. Now let's get on to it. You want the 70th week? You want to feel it? You want to know what this 70th week is, and when it's going to start? And this is when you got to get it, because I want you to understand all of this. Because after this 70th week, next week, we're going to jump right back into Revelation chapter 6. And all hell is going to break loose. But it's going to be a cakewalk for you. you're not only going to understand it, you're going to be sitting there watching it with excitement because you understand it because we took this detour. Not only are you going to understand it, but you're going to be able to teach the book of Revelation. You're going to be able to get a small group of friends together and talk about the return of the chosen one. You're going to be able to explain it, to articulate it, even to your pastor or those that should already know it, because you're that darn good. And you stayed with us for the whole journey and you're getting blessed for it. Remember, Revelation chapter 1 said, blessed is he who hears it, okay? Hears it, bless. Now, let's jump in to this 70th week, okay? So let's do it now. Verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. There you go. That's your 70th week. That's your last week of human history. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. I'll read it to you again because I want you to understand this, and then we're going to break it down. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That 70th week, that last week of human history. And in the midst of that week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and of the overspreading of the abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out on the desolate. Whoa, this is some serious business. This is some serious business. Let's break this down. That 1 week we talked about, the 7 years, the Shabuah. This is the last week in human history. Okay, is initiated. Now, when does the week start? The 70th week starts when he confirms a covenant for 7 years. Once the pen on that covenant, on that peace treaty is signed by all the nations and all the parties, the 70th week begins. So I don't want you to think, and I want you to understand this, and this is the good part for those of us that's getting raptured up, okay? I don't know if you can see my little Kenobi cup, but I'm excited about it. Okay. Now, after the rapture of the church, the 70th week doesn't start right away. It could be a week after the rapture. It could be a year after the rapture. It could be 30 years after the rapture. We don't know, but what we do know is when the clock is ticking, that last 7 years, see, here's the good thing. We don't know when the rapture is going to happen, that first part of the return of the chosen one, because the doctrine of imminence says it could happen at any moment. But for those that are left behind, you can count down to the day when Jesus will come back for his return, his revelation, when he steps on earth. Why? Because when he confirms the covenant for many, with many for 1 week, once he signs that peace treaty, the 70th week of Daniel is beginning. And all you got to do is count down the days from that signing to 7 years backwards. And on that last day, on the day after that, Christ is coming back. You can time the return of the chosen one by this 7th week, but you cannot time the rapture. No one knows the day of the hour. We are supposed to expect it. But the return of the chosen one, his revelation, can be counted down. Now, let's break this down. So the 1 week pertains to the 70th week, the last week of human history. And the he. Well, what's the he? Well, the antecedent is the prince that shall come. Remember, the antecedent is what came before. So what came before? It says, and the prince who shall come. So the he is the prince that shall come. So in this 70th week, we are looking for a prince like, okay, Titus Vespasian. He will be of Roman descent, okay? He will set up a non-aggression peace deal with Israel and the world. So he's going to go out, okay, and this prince that shall come, okay, in the 70th week. I'll give you his name, but right now we're going to call him the prince who that shall come. He sets up a non-aggression peace deal with Israel and the world. Somewhere in the halfway point, 3.5 years, he flips Israel. He flips Israel, and he breaks his own covenant and declares all-out war on Israel. Now, this prince shall be worse. Now watch this, because we also have history as a clue. Because it says right here that this prince that shall come shall cause the sacrifice and the oblations to cease in the temple, and abominations that will come, and he would make them desolate. So I'm looking for an abomination of desolation. I'm looking for someone to change the laws and times of sacrifice in the temple. Now, watch this. There's no temple right now. Okay? But this tells me that that temple will be built again. And I'm actually going to show you in one of my platforms, believe it or not, that they are collecting money right now for the rebuilding of the temple in Washington. I'm not even going to spoil it, but it's powerful. So the temple will be built again because Daniel said it would and Jesus said it would. But somewhere after this, and so what happens is when he signs his peace deal and he gives the temple back, he makes it legally possible for the Jews to go back to Mosaic Judaism. Mosaic Judaism is when they cut the bulls and the lambs, and they did all the sacrifices and the offerings all in the temple as accordance with Old Testament law. So he's going to give them that back. And let me tell you something. That's very important for the Jew. Because you know the biggest problem the Jews have right now? They got no way to deal with their sin. Because the only way they could deal with their sin was in the Old Testament, when they had the Day of Atonement, when they had the scapegoat, and when they had the sacrifices and all of that. And there's no temple right now. And so they moved from Mosaic Judaism to Talmud Judaism, which is it's like Judaism light, where you don't have to worry about the goats and the bulls and all of that. But they because of that, they've got no remedy. Right now, the Jews have no remedy for their sin, because there is no place for them to have sacrifice. But this prince that shall come is going to make it okay and rebuild the temple. He's going to tell him it's okay to be able to do that. Okay? But 3.5 years after that, he flips the Jews and says, I want this all to stop. Now, this prince who shall come, we have also history as our guide. Because in 167 BC, there was an Antiochus Epiphanes. Watch that. A-T-I-A-N-T-I. Antiochus Epiphanes, who in 167 BC seized and destroyed the Second Temple, changed religious practices, set up the statue of Zeus in the temple, and slaughtered a pig on the altar. He also stops Mosaic sacrifices and offerings in the temple. He will work in tandem with God in initiating, not that he's a friend of God, okay, but the things that he do will lead up to the great tribulation, i.e. Jacob's trouble for the Jews. Now, again, I told you I'm not going to make no apologies for being gone, because I've been studying. And I want to introduce you to something that you guys got to look at, okay? And so this is called the Book of Maccabees, okay? I don't know if you can see that, okay? So I read this book, and now this book is a pretty good book. It's a book that goes over this this war that happened between Titus Epiphanes, okay, and the Jews, because after he took over Jerusalem, they documented all the things that they fought for, including when he did this abomination desolation. And so I have some scripture verses from the book of Maccabees. First, let me give you some background on it. The book of Maccabees, it's 4 books, none of which is in the Hebrew Bible, but all of which appear in some of the manuscripts of the Septuagint. The first 2 books are part of canonical scripture in the Jewish Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate, the Latin Bible, the Vulgate. So hence, because they're in the Vulgate, they are canonical to Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, okay? And are also included in the Protestant Apocrypha, okay? That means supporting books, supporting historical documents to our Bible, okay? So this stuff is real. It happened. It's part of history. It's 167 BC. But the good part of this is that in the book of Maccabees, those Jews documented what they went through. And so I'm going to take you on this journey because it's important. I know it's a lot of reading. I'm giving you tons of documents and tons of stuff to really sink your teeth in, because I want you to understand, when you really get an idea of who this man is, who this prince is to come, I want you to understand just how dastardly this dude is. I want you to understand just how evil he is, just how anti-Christ he is. I want you to understand what he did to the Jews in 167 BC. And that's going to give you an idea of what he's going to do in the 70th week. And so without further ado, I'm going to start reading from the book of Maccabees, book 1, starting out at verse 10. And it says, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus, was a sinful descendant of these rulers. He had been a hostage in Rome before rising to the throne 137th year of Greek rule. And in those days, there were some ungodly Jews who tried to lead many astray. As he's circling around, by the way, and he's taking over all these lands, the Jews inside says, let's make an agreement with the Gentiles around us. For since we separated ourselves from them, disaster has followed after disaster. And many of the Jews thought this was good advice. So they went to the king and authorized them to introduce, they went to Epiphanes and he got them to introduce Gentile practices. So you've got Jews within Jerusalem that started to go astray, apostia, okay? And in Jerusalem, they built an education complex for promoting Greek culture, as was customarily done among the Gentiles. So you got Jews walking away from what they know, Mosaic law, because they didn't want to deal with Antiochus, okay? So then I'm going to keep reading here. And then it says, okay, they hid the fact that they were circumcised. They abandoned their holy covenant with God, and they joined with Gentiles, becoming slaves to evil. Once Antiochus Epiphanes consolidated his power, he decided to make himself king of Egypt as well, so that he might rule over 2 kingdoms. He invaded Egypt with a massive army, chariots, elephants, and horsemen, and a large fleet. He attacked Philopator, king of Egypt, who turned and fled in terror, leaving behind many casualties. This guy was serious business. Antiochus captured the fortified cities of Egypt and plundered the entire land. After conquering Egypt in the 143rd year of Greek rule, Antiochus returned to Israel with his powerful force and marched into Jerusalem. He arrogantly entered the temple sanctuary and carried away the gold incense altar, the lampstands, the light, and all its accessories. the table of the bread of the presence, the cups used for making drink offerings, the bowls, the gold incense, the burners, the curtain, the crowns, and the gold decoration that was on the front of the temple. He stripped the temple of everything of value. He took the silver and gold and the precious vessels, as well as all the hidden treasures he could find. And when he had gathered everything of value, he returned to his old country. He had murdered many people and arrogantly bragged about it. Throughout Israel, many mourned deeply, and the rulers and elders grieved. Young women and young men grew weak, and the beauty of women faded. Every bridegroom began to lament, and every bride mourned in her bridal chamber. The land trembled for its residents, and all of Israel was filled with shame. Not done yet, but stay with me. You can see how ruthless Antiochus was. A-N-T-I-K-I-S. Watch this. And it says, now, 2 years later, King Antiochus sent his chief tax collector to the towns of Judea and returned at Jerusalem with a massive force. He deceived many people by speaking peaceful words, thus gaining their trust. But suddenly, he attacked the city and killed many of the Israelites. He plundered the city, set it on fire, tore down its houses and walls. He took women and children captive and carried away their livestock. He rebuilt the fortified city of David with a great wall and strong towers, and it became their citadel. He manned and strengthened the fortifications with sinful and wicked men. They stored up weapons and provisions and collected their wealth. He and his men plundered from Jerusalem, and so they became a perpetual threat to Israel. Almost there, stay with me. The citadel became an ambush for the temple, an ever-present evil in Israel. They murdered the innocent all around the sanctuary. They even defiled, here we go, the abomination of desolation. You want it? This is what it really was. It's just not a word. I wanted you to come to understand what the abomination of desolation really was, as told by these Jewish Maccabees. Okay? He said, the citadel became an ambush for the temple, an ever-present evil in Israel. They murdered the innocent all around the sanctuary. They even defiled the holy place. Because of them, the residents of Jerusalem fled, and the city became the home of foreigners. Jerusalem became a stranger to her own offspring, and her children abandoned her. Her temple became as barren as the desert. Her festivals were turned to mourning. Her Sabbath were turned to days of shame. Her honor was turned to reproach. Her dishonor was as great as her former glory. Her happiness was turned to grief. King Antiochus issued a proclamation that his entire kingdom should be united as one people, and that each nation should renounce its own customs. The Gentiles accepted this command of the king, and many Israelites also willingly followed his religion. They offered sacrifice to idols and no longer observed the Sabbath. The king sent messengers with letters to Jerusalem and to all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow the foreign customs of his kingdom. He banned burnt offerings, sacrifices, and drink offerings in the temple. He prohibited keeping the Sabbath and celebrating religious festivals. He defiled the temple. He ordered altars and temples and idols to be built, and pigs and other ceremonially unclean animals to be sacrificed. Now, right at the top of this, you see I still kept verse 27. Now, as you just heard that in the breakdown, let me quickly reread verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifices and oblations to cease. And the overspreading of abominations he shall make desolate. I think they just said he slaughtered pigs on the altar. He put idols up. And then it says, their sons were not to be circumcised, and they were to practice all kinds of unclean and vile customs, so that they would forget to keep the law of Moses. Anyone who failed to obey the king's command would be put to death. Antiochus sent this command to his whole kingdom. He appointed officers to enforce his policies, and he commanded all the towns of Judea to take turns offering pagan sacrifices. Pagan sacrifices. Many of the people who abandoned the law of Moses joined in these sacrifices and committed evil deeds. They forced the faithful Israelites to hide in any possible place of refuge. On December 6th, in the 145th year of Greek rule, the king and his forces, here we go, set up sacrilegious objects causing desecration on top of the altar for burnt offerings, and they built pagan altars in the surrounding Judean towns. They burnt incense and offered sacrifices at the doors of the houses and in the streets. And whenever a copy of the book of the law was found, it was torn up and burned. By the king's decree, they put to death anyone found with a copy of the book of the covenant or anyone discovered following the law of Moses. Each month, they punished any Israelites who were caught remaining in the towns. For on the 25th day of the month, they offered sacrifices on the pagan altars that stood on top of the altar of the burnt offering. Look at this desolation. Look at the desolation. By order of the king, women who had their sons circumcised were put to death with their babies hung around their necks, and all their families and everyone else who took part in the circumcision were killed with them. Yet there were many Israelites who refused to eat unclean food and who welcomed death. That was the Maccabees. They said we'd rather die. And that's when they started this 3-year war against Antiochus Epiphanes using guerrilla warfare tactics that finally rooted him out, and they took back the temple. He said, yet many Israelites who refused to eat unclean food and who welcomed death rather than be defiled by food, profaning the holy covenant. So watch this last word, the last sentence here. Watch this. So a time of great trouble had come upon Israel. That sounds like a time of Jacob's trouble, doesn't it? As spoken about in Jeremiah, the time of the Jews. So what we're saying right here, as this prince who is to come is going to be worse than Antiochus Epiphanes. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to do an abomination of desolation. He's going to have them rebuild the temple and have their sacrifices and oblations, and then he's going to take it all away. And it says, if you're worshiping the one true God, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your kids. I'm going to kill all of you. And watch me now. In the Bible, during this time of Jacob's trouble, okay, it says, first of all, history says 1 out of 3 Jews died in the Holocaust. In the day of Jacob's trouble, 2 out of 3 Jews are going to die. So you can see now, as you read from the Maccabees, what they went through with Antiochus. You're going to talk about a man who's going to be worse than Antiochus Epiphanes and who's going to rule the world. Now, you got to be excited about this. I'm not saying you're excited like you're happy about it. You should be excited you're not going to be here. And you should be excited as we go into Revelation. You know what's going to happen. I'm giving you such a foundation here. I'm giving you all of it. Never again will you be able to say or listen to anyone saying it's too deep. Revelation is too deep, too difficult to get into. All the signs and symbols and all this other stuff. I just don't understand it. You can say, oh, come on, that's nothing. Let me show you. I want you to show somebody this. I want you to teach somebody. You got a responsibility. When people start asking you what's going on in the world, and as we get into Revelation, you're going to put politics and prophecy together. Politics and prophecy together. World events right now and prophecy together. And so when people are talking about the news and people are talking about all the stuff and all the politicians and all the stuff that's going on in the world, all over the world, you are able to know with confidence what it all means. And your responsibility is to take what you know and pass that on. Now, let me ask you a question, and I said it again. Do you know anybody right now that if the rapture came right now, who do you know that'd be left behind? Do you really want them facing this? And I know that I'm talking about people you care about. I'm talking about our loved ones that we know that could be left behind. This is going to be 7 years of hell on earth. And I don't wish that on my worst enemy. And I'm not talking about my enemies. I'm not talking about, the people you work for, or I'm not talking about your bosses or your coworkers. I'm drilling down a little bit. I'm talking about those people you sit next to in the pews on Sunday. I'm talking about your pastors. I'm talking about your loved ones. I'm talking about those in your own household. I'm talking about your second cousins or your siblings. I'm talking about all of those people that you get in contact with and you care about. That you know that if the chosen one said, come up here to verse 4:1 and the book of Revelation, they're going to be left here. And you don't want that. You got a responsibility to do something about it. Now let's keep going because I'm excited. I'm excited because I'm giving you good stuff. I'm doing my part. I know some of you don't like and subscribe, but I'm still going to keep doing my part. I feel called to give you the truth. I feel called to tell you and show you what the hell's going on. I feel called to be able to explain and articulate as best I can the return of the chosen one. Now, let's talk a little bit about this guy. The future prince, who is he? Who is this guy? Well, the prince who shall come is mostly called the Antichrist. We know them as that. We labeled him as that. But the Bible has over 30 names for this dude. And I'm just giving you some of them. So let me give you some of the names that's in the Bible, the architectural design of it, how it flows from Genesis, how his name flows through Revelation. In Genesis, he's called the seed of the serpent. In Psalm 5, the bloody and deceitful man. In Psalm 10, the wicked one. Psalm 140, the violent man. Isaiah 10 and Micah 5, the Assyrian. Parking lot that, because I'm going to get you in that in a second. Ezekiel 21, the profane and wicked prince. Daniel 11, the vile person. Daniel 11, the willful king. Zechariah 11, the IDOL shepherd. 2 Thessalonians, the man of sin, the man of perdition, the lawless one. In Revelation, he's called the beast. Now, there's a ton of more names in middle here I didn't give you, but this is who this prince is. These are some of the names in the Bible that they called this guy. That's your prince who shall come. He's worse than Antiochus. He's worse than Antiochus. But I'm not done trying to give you an idea now. Here's the next question you're going to ask me. Where shall this guy come from? I can give you that. I can give you that because, again, the reason why when you get into Revelation, you're going to have I'm giving you the answers that's in Revelation. So where's this guy come from? In Daniel chapter 2, the king had a crazy dream. And he had the dream and he said, hey, listen, I had this crazy dream about this statue. It was all different metals and stuff. You guys tell me what it is and you can live. So they said, King, we can tell you what it means. Tell us a dream. He said, no, you tell me what I dreamt or you're dead. And they got scared and somehow it got around to Daniel. Daniel prayed and came back and said, oh, great king, I can tell you the dream. And Daniel gave him the dream. Now, the dream as he broke it down was about a statue. All right. And it was the head, the chest, the belly, the legs, the feet, and the crushing rock. And it went all into all of this stuff. And again, prophecy and history, they go together. If a prophet is true, whatever he prophesied is going to become historical because it's going to happen. So Daniel said, first of all, oh, great king, you are the head of gold. You are the kingdom of Babylon. You're the top of the world. You've got it all. You control the world. But you're going to be taken over. And Babylon ruled from 606 to 539 BC. Prophecy and history. And then he said, but, O king, the chest of arms and silver or the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians, and they will take you over. And the Medes and Persians took over from 539 BC to 332 BC. But the old king, don't worry about the Persians, because the belly and thighs of bronze will be the kingdom of ancient Greece, Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great came and conquered all the known worlds. And they said he cried in his bed because there were no more kingdoms to conquer. Okay? And so Alexander took over Medes and Persians from 332 to 68 BC. Now, Alexander died. And when he died, they came to him and they said, who should take over the kingdom? And he said, the strongest. Okay? And so the strongest, his 4 generals, basically were the legs of iron, and they became the kingdom of ancient Rome from 68 to 7 BC. Now, it says in the dream that the feet of iron and the feet of clay, the 10 toes, will break off into 10 different pieces. Now, those 4 kingdoms, the ancient Rome they broke off into 10 pieces. Now, Rome was never conquered. So as you can see, 68 BC, the kingdom of ancient Rome, which became the kingdom, will become. These 10 toes right here have not happened yet. The 10 toes will become the kingdom of restored Rome. Rome was never conquered after 68 and 7 BC. It just broke itself up. But Rome will rise again. And it's going to be in 10 kingdoms of 10 toes, and it will be the feet and the iron of clay, the kingdom of restored Rome. Now, the prince that will come from this final kingdom of restored Roman Empire. But watch this. In the dream, it says there will be a crushing rock that will destroy this final kingdom. Rome will finally be destroyed. And what is that rock? We know what the rock is, right? Don't we know what the rock is? The rock is Christ. Somebody should be saying hallelujah. The crushing rock will be the kingdom of God, that when he comes back and the revelation of the chosen one sets up his millennial kingdom. The millennial kingdom will be the crushing rock, and he shall rule with an iron scepter. He will take over that revived Roman Empire, and all the kingdoms will be under the feet of the crushing rock. And that's the return of the chosen one. That's Daniel 2:44 for your reading. So that's where this prince is going to come from. Now, I'm going to throw a curveball in here for you right now. A curveball that I might even throw myself. Now, many of times in all my history of knowing what little bit I did about the return of the chosen one, I always believed that he would come from Europe, that he would come from the revived Roman Empire, the European Union. He would come from Europe and those surrounding countries as they come back up, right? Because that's revived Rome. That's Europe. It's Rome. But watch this. What I found out in history, okay, Emperor Constantine, he got so fed up with the politics of Rome that he relocated the Roman capital, this is historical, to Byzantium in 330 BC and later named it Constantinople, modern day Turkey. So the capital of Rome is also part of Turkey and the surrounding areas, okay? And there's 2 verses here, Isaiah 10:5 and Micah 5:5. The names that they call the Antichrist is the Assyrian. The Assyrian. Again, Constantine moved the capital of Rome to Byzantium, later changed the name to Constantinople. Istanbul is in Turkey. It's right there in modern day Turkey. So modern day Turkey, Istanbul, Constantinople is still all part of this revived Roman Empire. So again, that Roman Empire, he could come from Europe And he could come from one of those Arab immigrant nations over there coming up from Turkey and those surrounding nations. Okay? So that's a little curveball I'm throwing you. Don't matter to me where he come from. You know why? Because I don't tend to be here when he come. Boom. But he may come from there. If anybody's reading this, I'm going to do also, when I'm all done with Revelation, I'm going to do one more. And it's going to be what to do if you're left behind. But if you're left behind, and if he comes from the Syrian, and people say, no, that can't be him. Remember this. Constantinople, Istanbul, Byzantium, that's what happened. So he could come from the Assyrian. So that's where he's going to come from, people. The next question you're probably asking yourself is, what is his attributes? Tell me a little bit about this prince that shall come, Chris. Sure, I will. The prince that will come is going to be a leader like no other. He will hold the title and he will hold the world captive under his spell. He will be known and seen as the most interesting man in the world. Now watch some of this. He's an intelligent genius, very persuasive, a military leader, a shrewd politician. He's a financial genius. And I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to take up for Donald Trump right now, because I heard a lot of people turning around and saying, oh, he must be the Antichrist. He is not. And how dare you call him the Antichrist? That's our president. He is not no Antichrist, because as you can see here, he doesn't have the attributes to be it. The Antichrist is going to be an intelligent genius. He's going to be very persuasive. He's going to be a military leader, a shrewd politician, a financial genius. Well, I'm sorry, it's not him. He was bankrupt 6 or 7 times. He will be assassinated and resurrected, not him. He will rule the entire world and make a one world government. Now, I know I've showed films when he said he came back to save the world, but this is not him. And he will be worshiped. Okay, you may have me on that one. And he will demand loyalty. But it is not our president. And it's not Barack Obama. People stop saying that. That's not nice. That's not cool. It's not President Donald Trump. He's not the Antichrist. And look at all these attributes. Look at all these attributes. It's not him. Now, the Bible also gives us a little bit of hint about his description. Believe it or not. One verse in the Bible goes over his description. It says, woe to you. Woe to the IDOL shepherd that leaves the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. We're going to get into the book of Revelation, where he is assassinated and he is dying from a wound in his head. Okay, so we're going to go over that. So bam, that's where his attributes are. That's what I'm talking about. Now, most important question. When will this guy show up? Think about this for a second. He has to come to power. He has to come to power. In order for him to make a covenant with Israel and the world, there must be a platform for that. So again, we said the rapture could come. The rapture's in the intermission. But let's think about the world when the rapture happens. Don't just say, oh, it's going to be a rapture and after this. No. Think about the world after the rapture. Think about the lack of civil servants. Think about the garbage. Think about the planes and infrastructure. Think about all the crashes and all the dead people and all the dead bodies and all of that. Think about the monetary systems of the world, the economy. Think of all of that crashing by all of these millions and millions and millions of people that disappeared. Some of them in planes, in trains, in automobiles. Some of them bosses of multi-billion-dollar companies. I don't know any, but it could be. But all over the world, it's going to be chaos. And in the midst of this chaos, where the world is in confusion, when the world is trying to figure out what's going to happen, this political leader rises up. And this is the one who's persuasive. He has all the right words to say. He can calm the masses, and everybody's looking to him. He's the answer. He's the answer. Now, how do we get him to power why does Israel need a 7-year treaty for that 1 week? Ezekiel chapter 38 says, and I gave it to you before when I told you about the intermission, Russia attacks and invades Israel. It's going to happen. Now, Ezekiel chapter 8 and Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 5 and 6 says, and again, remember I told you about all of these nations are in the Bible. Look at this. Ezekiel 38, 5 and 6. Iran, Ethiopia, Egypt, Libya, Turkey, the Assyrian will form an alliance with Russia to invade. This will be a sudden attack. Israel will think they're at peace. And all of a sudden he invades. He's coming in for the oil. Russia's coming in for the land, and Russia's coming in for the minerals. The Dead Sea, all the minerals in there. They're coming in for the minerals. Okay? But as Russia is now on the ground, boots are on the ground, and it's attacking. He's attacking Israel. Okay? He's attacking Israel. What happens is that God miraculously comes in. Not America. I told you before. You can't find America in times. I just gave you all these nations, Ezekiel 38. There's only one sentence that some theologians, very few, say it could mean America. And I'm going to go over that with you. But I don't want it to mean America, but it makes sense. Okay? I'm not going to be here anyway. So I really don't care. What I'm saying is that they're going to come in and they're going to surround Israel, all of these nations. And if you think about it right now, what's happening in Israel? Remember I said politics and prophecy. There's what is surrounding Israel is called the Ring of Fire. It's Gaza, it's Hezbollah, and it's Iran. All these nations surrounding Israel. But over time, especially now, Israel has destroyed that Ring of Fire, laid waste to Palestine and Gaza. It took care of Syria. It took care of Iran's ability to make nuclear weapons. So right now, Israel is saying, nobody can hurt us. We're at peace. That's a moment where after the rapture, Russia is coming in. All the confusion in the world, Russia comes in and they attack. But then God suddenly intervenes himself. And God supernaturally destroys Russia. And when I say destroys Russia, he not just destroys the Russians that are on the ground. God turns his eyes and fixes his eyes on Russia itself, raining down volcanoes and meteors and pestilence and disease, wiping them out. And then Ezekiel 39 says that Israel will need 7 years to clean up and to convert the Russian weapons for fuel. So how do I know that this is in the intermission? Because the last week is 7 years. So they're not going to spend their 7 years doing this, because their last 7 years was what we already saw in verse 27. Okay? And the time of Jacob's trouble. But it says right here that Israel will need 7 years to convert those weapons to fuel, which hints that these weapons could be nuclear. Okay? And then it says Israel will take, Ezekiel 39, Israel will take 7 months to search for and bury the dead due to this war. So it's going to need 7 months and 7 years. That's part of this intermission. And then, so that this doesn't happen again. You saw God come down and destroy Russia. You saw all these nations go crazy. So that's when the prince that will come, the Antichrist, rises truly to prominence and says, wait a minute, I'm going to cut this peace deal. I want every nation to sign it, to back off of Israel for 7 years. It's a 7-year peace treaty. That's how it comes to pass. And again, I must tell you again, the 7th year, that last week of the 70th week of Daniel does not start until all the nations, including the prince that will come, takes a pen and signs the treaty. Once the last name is signed on that treaty, you can actually start counting backwards to the return of the chosen one. And you can turn around and start counting when all of those judgments, the 21 judgments in the book of Revelation is going to come. Now, here's the thing I told you about, and this is a concern to me. And I'm going to give you some, I'm going to bring something up on this. I'm going to parking lot it for a little bit. Few people pay attention to Ezekiel 39:6. But very few people, and I know why nobody wants to talk about it, because in our arrogance as Americans, in our arrogance, we don't want to think and we don't want to accept that judgment can come to us. But Billy Graham said this: if God didn't bring judgment to America, he has to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. And even Jesus said that in the day of judgment, Sodom and Gomorrah is going to be looking at nations and saying, whoa, y'all shouldn't have did that. Look what happened to us. You had to learn and you didn't. Now, that's paraphrasing. Now, Ezekiel 39:6 mentions those who live in, woe to those who live in safety in the coastlands, because those living on the coast of Israel and the surrounding nations, even in Russia, will be destroyed. Okay? That word coastlands are islands or continents. Those who live in safety that is separated from the war due to their locations as being separated by the water and the coastline. Okay? It brought me to an incident that, and some people say, by the way, that that's the only hint of America in prophecy. Don't hold me to that. I'm telling you that's what some say, but I'll say it again. Nobody can tell you where America is in end time prophecy. And that verse right there makes sense to me, but I can't prove that. But I'm not going to be here anyway to know what happened to America. I know it's not in prophecy, but I do know I'm not going to be here, neither are you. Now, watch this. And watch me now. So he facilitates this covenant, and all of this stuff goes down, and all of this stuff happens. He comes up and he signs the deal. The 70th week begins. And that's when the 70th week begins. Let me give you a breakdown of what's going to be happening on heaven and on earth. And I'm wrapping up right now. The world is in worldwide chaos. The vanishings, there will be calamity, infrastructure, loss of civil servants, lawlessness will take over. The world will be short on both people, resources, and skills. Think about it. Doctors, world leaders, policemen, firefighters, all gone. As nations collapse, a politician will arise from Europe or Turkey, or the Union of Arab Immigrants, whatever it's called. He shall be a man that appears to have all the answers to put the world back on track. Russia will attack and invade Israel. The prince will mediate, negotiate, and sign a 7-year peace deal. Now, just things to remember in all of that. The church and Israel has two distinctive destinies. Jesus is coming back for his church, but he's not coming back, and we're waiting for him. But the Jews are not waiting for him. So he's not coming back until what? Until they acknowledge their offense and seek him and beg him to come back. Okay? So when he's coming to get the church that's waiting, Israel's going to be pushed to the wall when the time of Jacob's trouble, worse than Antiochus Epiphanes, so they can acknowledge what they did to him and pray that he comes back. Okay? Israel must endure that 70 weeks. We already accounted for 69. We just went over the last week of history. Okay? Now, that 70th week, those 70 weeks have nothing to do with Gentiles. It has nothing to do with us. Anybody that tells you, okay, that we're supposed to go through the tribulation on this 70 week, they've got to identify, you got to push them back to Daniel chapter 9 and have them explain how come the 70 weeks appear to be for Jews only and why I got to be here for that. They can't explain that to you. All right? Now, we went over God's plan after Revelation chapter 4 is specifically towards the Jews. Remember, after Revelation chapter 4, Jesus changed from bridegroom to high priest. So we went over that. And the entire world will suffer. The focus is on the Jews. Anyone that gets saved down here, tribulation saints, but it's all about the Jews to push them to the wall. You should have confidence right now. Man, you should feel good. I sold you on the 70th week. I gave you all the backup. You are ready. You are ready right now to walk into the book of Revelation. But listen to me. This is some serious business. Can you say you're not going to be here? Are you sure you're not going to be here? I don't want you to be here. I don't want you to be left behind. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you do. I don't know what your relationship with God is, or if there even is one. But I've given you history and I've given you prophecy. And I've given you more prophecy that will turn into history. But when this turns into history, you don't want to be here. You don't want your spouse, your children, your mother, your father. You don't want anyone that you love and care about to be left behind. And you don't want to be left behind yourself. This is the moment to check yourself. This is a moment for gut check time. It's the moment for you to find out truly, as Paul said, are you in or out? Are you one of those churches that, are you Philadelphian or are you Laodicean? You've got to start doing a gut check. You've got to look yourself in the mirror and say to yourself, where do I need to be with the chosen one? How do I make my election sure? And if you've done some stuff right now that you're second guessing if you're going to be left behind or not, get on your knees and just tell him what you did and ask for forgiveness. He is faithful and just to forgive. Okay? He's faithful and just to forgive. And if you have never, ever come to the chosen one and ask him to be Lord of your life, it's time to do it now. It's time to do it today, because the moment after you do it, you could be caught up. Or the moment after you think about doing it and don't, you could be left behind. And all you got to do, it says, those who call on the name of the Lord will be saved. That's what it says in Romans. And so I always go back. I know there's this long sinner's prayer that says, come into my life, be Lord of my life, I accept who you are. You are the Christ. You died for my sins and rose again. Please accept me. Forgive me for my sins. I got all of that stuff we're supposed to say. But there is one line in Romans that says, those who call on the name of the Lord will be saved. And it pushes me back to Peter. When Peter was in that river and Peter was going down, he didn't have time for no sinner's prayer. He didn't have time for this long litany of, oh, thou art Father, please forgive me for all the wrong deeds. He said three things. Jesus, save me. Those who call the name of the Lord will be saved if you mean it from your heart. If you mean it from your heart and soul, it's time for that change. All you got to say is, Jesus, save me. And the rest of the stuff, you can say it another time. But in your heart, you got to mean it in your heart and soul that you're ready for him to save you. And that means changing, turning your life inside out, upside down, and sideways. Jesus, save me. Next week, we're going back into the book of Revelation. We're going to start chapter 6. All hell is breaking loose. It's coming down, and it's coming down 21 judgments. We're going to see the rise of the Antichrist, the assassination of that Antichrist with the wound in his head. And we're going to see the resurrection of an Antichrist. We're going to see the time of Jacob's trouble. We're going to see the marriage, and we're going to find out what we're doing up in heaven. Believe me when I tell you this. We're going to see it all happen down here, but we're going to be watching from the mezzanine. And I'm going to see you next week. I want you to do me a favor if you can. Like, subscribe, and share. I got to tell you, I don't know where you're getting this stuff. I bet you're not getting this in church. I'm not saying it's all that, but I'm saying I'm doing this because I know you need to hear it. Like, subscribe, share. Let's push it. Let's get ready right now for his return. Prepare yourself right now, because at any moment, you can hear the sound of that trumpet. And you can hear, come up hither. Bam. We gone. And if anything happened between now and next week, if the world's in calamity, I'll see you in the sky.